Inter Milan are a proud Italian side with a rich history of winning and attracting some of the best stars in the world. Recently, the club picked up its 20th Serie A title, earning itself a second star on its badge. This comes after an incredible run of form under Simone Inzaghi. At the start of the season, punters predicted a tightly contested campaign. However, those predictions unraveled faster than wax in heat as the defending champions capitulated under internal unrest and lost their title-winning manager. Inter seized the opportunity to pounce and lay claim to the top of the table. With an early lead in hand, everything appeared to be smooth sailing for the Nerazzurri, who mostly managed to be injury-free for the long haul of games involving both league, domestic cup and Champions League football. What makes Inter's victory even sweeter is that they claimed the trophy after the match with local rivals AC Milan, who also began the season on a title hunt for their 20th Serie A trophy. The 2-1 victory at San Siro took the Nerazzurri 17 points clear of Milan, with a few games in hand until the end of the season. Although Inter appeared to be a recurring contender lately, the team fell into a slump not that long ago. Inzaghi's first campaign was marred by a poor season following the shake-up after his predecessor's departure. Between 2014 and 2024, Inter finished outside the top 6 twice, which looks good on paper, but it wasn't until 2019 that the club started mounting any serious challenge for the league title. Before then, they mostly pandered around the top 4, but were leagues behind the table leaders. Then came Antonio Conte to steady the ship in 2019 and get the Nerazzurri firing on all cylinders again. In his first season, the Italian coach dragged Inter to a second-place finish, losing the league by 1 miserable point. By 2020, Conte did not allow a repeat of that, winning the league with 12 points ahead of second place. Inter Milan were flying. They were finally where they belonged, true contenders winning silverware like in their golden years. However, everything changed in 2021. See, the pandemic wasn't exactly kind to the Italian giants, forcing its owners, Suning Group, to take out a load of nearly €400 million to keep the club running. The Chinese investors have had a decent time with the club since purchasing it from Eric Tohe in 2016. However, the economic downturn caused by the global health crisis forced their hand in parting with some of their best players to bring in some revenue and free up the wage budget. Antonio Conte took that about as well as poison when players like Romelu Lukaku and Achraf Hakimi left for Chelsea and PSG respectively for big fees. Although both players were expected to be poached by other clubs, given their performances in a promising season, no one could have predicted just how hard their departures would affect the club. It didn't help that the club also lost Christian Eriksen to a near-fatal cardiac problem, and the manager had just rage-quit due to not keeping his preferred players. Going back to 1999 to talk about Simone Inzaghi and where he came from. Lazio signed the younger Inzaghi brother from Piacenza, his boyhood club. Simone would go on to have a great debut campaign, helping the club win the Coppa Italia and its first Scudetto in 26 years and its last to date. He spent the next decade at the club, retiring there as something of a local legend. Like many players, Inzaghi transitioned to coaching soon afterward, landing a job with the Lazio youth sides, Allievi and Primavera, before eventually replacing the sacked first-team manager, Stefano Pioli, as an interim boss in April 2016. His interim spell was cut short in a matter of months after the club moved to sign Marcelo Bielsa on a more permanent basis. However, the ex-Leeds coach lasted less than a week on the job before packing up and making his exit. With fewer managers to choose from, the club eventually recalled Inzaghi and gave him the gig on a more permanent basis. For the next 5 years after his appointment, the Italian turned Lazio's fortunes around, leading them to the Coppa Italia final twice before winning the tournament in the 2018-19 season. He also won the Supercoppa Italiana twice to cement his legacy in the Lazio dugout. After Antonio Conte left Inter in the summer of 2021, the Milan club snapped up Inzaghi as the former's replacement. He was introduced to a high-flying team that had just won the Scudetto for the first time in over a decade, but Inter were hardly the team they were under Conte. Management changes and player departures meant the club needed restructuring, which saw a dip in form. However, there wasn't a steep decline in performance. Although Inter could not defend its title, Inzaghi still managed to end the campaign with a victory in the Coppa Italia final, Inter's first in 11 years. He also managed to get the team into the knockout rounds of the Champions League for the first time in a decade and won the Supercoppa Italiana. The Nerazzurri finished a respectable second that season. The following season, Inter oversaw yet more player departures during the summer, in the likes of Romelu Lukaku, who had been brought back to the club on loan, as well as the sale of Marcelo Brozovic to the Saudi League, Milan Skriniar to PSG, Andre Onana to Manchester United, and Edin Dzeko to Fenerbahce. But before they lost these players, they rocked up to the Champions League final and gave Manchester City a run for their money before eventually losing 1-0 to a Rodri strike. Until then, Inzaghi had yet to coach a team to win the league. Don't be mistaken, he was a good coach and had great success in local cup tournaments, as his 3 Italian Cups and 5 Italian Super Cups speak for him. But that can no longer be said about the Italian. In an age where new generations of players turned coaches are all the rage, Inzaghi has marked his stake as one of the best in the game. No longer can it be said that the King of Cups, a moniker from his prowess in cup competitions, doesn't know how to win the league, because in the 2023-24 season, he did just that, leading Inter to the Scudetto. After 2 summer transfer windows of losing some of their best players, it was up to Inzaghi to steady the ship and keep Inter from going into a slump again. The first incident after Conte's departure showed the team was fragile, and after the 2022-23 season summer window, when they lost yet more players, reinforcements were crucial. You'd think that Inzaghi's team is built on the backs of the best in the game, but you'd be wrong. Inter weren't a big spender in the market. Despite losing their best players within 3 years, Inzaghi still managed to develop a winning team by maintaining a core group and building his team around them. This lot consists of 4 of his most used players, including Lautaro Martinez, Alessandro Bastoni, Nicolo Barella, and Stefan De Vrij. Barella was the only one of this group that Conte signed. The rest were already there before his signing. Inzaghi began his rebuilding by leveraging free agents, bringing in the likes of Marcus Thuram, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, and Henrik Mkhitaryan. Then came the value signings, in which he signed Jan Sommer, Denzel Dumfries, Jan Bissek, and Matteo Darmian, none of whom cost more than €12.5 million. His next course of action was loaning players with an obligation to buy, which is football's answer to a buy now, pay later scheme. That's how Inter managed to land Davide Fratesi. The club had to keep its net spending low due to the huge loan its owners had obtained in 2021 and had promised to repay by the 20th of May 2024. In light of recent news, Suning Group was unable to repay its loans, and Inter has now been claimed by new ownership, but that's a topic for another video. For now, what we must appreciate is Inzaghi's ingenuity in skirting the problem of little finance to keep the team not just afloat, but successful and competitive as well. Since the Italian manager switched from Lazio, the club has claimed a lot of silverware, and he can be credited for much of that. However, others deserve credit for masterminding the whole situation. Chief Executive Beppe Marotta and Sporting Director Piero Ausilio. We live in interesting times when coaches are marketed not by their win percentages, but by their playing styles, vision, and heroics. Simone Inzaghi remains a low-key, unassuming figure through this. For perspective, older managers are in demand for their philosophies and capabilities in cup events. Some are considered safe or wild options, depending on how easily they work with clubs. The newer crop of managers approach the game with fresh eyes and the perspective of playing entertaining football without sacrificing on attack or defense. Despite what he's achieved so far, Inzaghi can easily enter the conversation for both sides, but he's rarely touted for new roles. Several top clubs will be changing managers this season, but there have been hardly any rumours of approaching the Italian coach. For instance, Vincent Kompany failed miserably with Burnley in the Premier League, but even he's getting headlined as a potential Bayern Munich coach to succeed Thomas Tuchel. And that's a shame, because Inzaghi's a tactician and excellent player manager. His smart recruitment has Inter playing their best football yet, with players way less expensive than their title-winning form under Conte. He's also developed players better, helping Federico Di Marco put in performances worthy of the best wing-backs in the game. Not to mention converting an attacker in Hakan Çalhanoğlu into a defensive deep-lying playmaker and succeeding. Both players testify that their fine form is down to Inzaghi's leadership qualities, his passion for the club's success, and his ability to command respect from the players and get them playing just cohesively. Simone Inzaghi is the 6th different manager to help Inter to a Scudetto after Luciano Spalletti, Antonio Conte, Maurizio Sarri, Stefano Pioli, and Massimiliano Allegri. What makes his position amongst this list of tactical giants even better is that his victory earned the club its 2nd star. But just how did he manage that? For that, we pick the brains of the Italian manager via how he lines up his players. Inter typically begin with a 3-man defense in deep possession, with a single or double pivot midfield ahead of them. The wing-backs sit higher up the pitch to run the channels as both wingers and wide midfielders, in addition to their defensive duties. Finally, pushing into the final third is a double strike force of Marcus Thuram and Lautaro Martinez, culminating in Inzaghi's preferred 3-5-2 formation. But the formation barely scratches the surface of the tactics. When in possession, Inter rotates its patterns to look unpredictable. This is typical for teams that operate in a back 3, as they tend to have more fluidity depending on the game. These rotations allow the team to control possession and the progress of the game. This is great for Inter, because the team likes holding onto the ball in their defense, with all 3 centre-backs rotating play and seeking out opportunities to begin an attack. During this rotation, midfield players, both attacking and deeper lying, also rotate to keep opponents guessing. Inter will often look to leverage double-wide occupation, which begins when a midfielder drops even deeper into defense, allowing for one of the wide centre-backs to push higher up the field. This is why Bastoni is such a key figure for the Nerazzurri. He makes progressive runs that kickstart the attack. According to statistics from FBrEF.com, Bastoni ranks in the top 1% of defenders for his attacking output. He pulls this off effortlessly, thanks to his ball-playing abilities and Inzaghi giving him free rein to push forward and test opponents. But the manager isn't a one-trick pony and knows better than to make this style of play a calling card. So the team still achieved its wide domination in several different ways. For one, instead of a midfielder dropping into defense, a wide midfielder pulls even wider to support the defense in building out of the back. Yet another rotation involves Hakan Çalhanoğlu dropping into defense with another midfielder, changing the back numbers to 5 with the added midfielder acting as a wide CB. With more structure at the back now, the team moves forward, with the wider CB changing roles into a wing-back and the wing-backs turning into wingers, overrunning the opposition's backline while protecting theirs. As for chance creation, the team plays balls behind the defense, which lends even more unpredictability to Inzaghi's side. Using any of these several formations in the build-up, like 4-1 and 4-2 or 3-1 and 3-2, gives Inter varying shapes and attacks to use on the opponent, based on the players available to execute the attack. Even better, this system dovetails nicely with the rotational pattern they operate in possession. As for the frontmen, Martinez drops just lower than Thuram, since the Argentine is the better playmaker of the two. This makes him more capable as a target man, while the Frenchman works as a poacher, running in behind to keep the gas on the attack. The attacking midfielder, in this case Barella or Mkhitaryan, pushes between the lines, changing positions to improve the attack further. When on the back foot, Inter resorts to their famous 5-3-2 shape, with Çalhanoğlu taking up the role of anchorman as the deepest lying midfielder, a role since vacated by Brozovic. Inzaghi rounds up his tactics with a high press, beginning recovery of the ball from his strikers. The front men press the opposition's defense to force play into midfield. Once that transition is made, Inter's midfield steps up to force an error from the opponent's midfield, who are now under pressure to either kickstart an unprepared attack or recycle possession. In the heat of the moment, an Inter wing-back steps up to recover loose balls from opponents' errors. Despite having a formation that looks defensive, Inzaghi's team is anything but the park the bus kind. The system isn't compact or rigid, but fluid, allowing midfielders to close passing channels in the attack and defense. This allows for the controlled chaos of forcing errors and catching opponents off guard. In doing that, they can recover possession in dangerous areas, defend from the foot, and mount an effective high press. Simone Inzaghi has a brilliant mind and tactics rooted in dynamism, rather than the rigid playing styles most clubs have come to own throughout history. His trophy cabinet shows he's not averse to the big stages, and his ability to work with what he has and mould players into the best version of themselves makes him a worthy contender for any managerial gig. Unfortunately, he's been left out of the conversation for no apparent reason. But with many teams undergoing a shake-up before the new season, especially in the Premier League, there might just be a chance that someone may swoop in for the Italian. Although this is disputed by Italian journalist Gianluca Di Marzio. Until then, we can only speculate. What are your thoughts on Inzaghi as a manager? Please like the video if you enjoyed it, and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content like this.